been to Peru before. For my wife was working there, so I went with her, had a holiday.
¿Y qué les ha parecido la recepción que han tenido? Entiendo que Lima dieron un concierto donde tuvieron una muy buena recepción por parte de la gente.
And how do you feel about the concert in Lima, especially because she understands that you had a very warm welcome from the people there?
Yeah, I mean it's been absolutely fantastic. I think people think that wherever we go, we say the same thing. You know, like, oh, the crowd is but in Sao Paulo and Rio and Lima, it was such a different level to normal audiences. You know, the response was so beautiful. I felt really humbled. You know.
Respecto al disco que están presentando ahora, Blood Treasures, me gustaría saber qué piensa él respecto a la evolución en relación a los tres primeros discos, cómo es diferente, en qué se parece, su propia visión como creador.
From your own perspective as a creator or as a composer, how do you see the evolution from your previous records to this one, Blood versions?
Well, I think the first record from any band is always a lot different from anything else you ever do, because it's a collection of everything you've done in your life before, you know. So in a way, your first record, for our first record, Keep on Your Mean Side, was really like our mission statement. You know, it was our way of presenting ourselves for the first time to the world. So in that sense, I think it was a lot more. We wore our influences on our sleeves. It was more obvious what our influences were. And then after that, I find that you kind of get a little bit thrown by, or influenced by how people react. You know, whether you want to or not, you get influenced by how people react. So after Keep on Your Mean Side, everybody said, you know, the press was saying we were part of this scene, you know, new wave of garage bands, and I hated it. I always wanted to be a band that had its own scene. I didn't want to be a part of anybody else's scene. So I suppose that influenced us for our next record, where I tried to do the absolute opposite, and, you know, had no reverb, no echo. It was a very brutal record. And then I just started experimenting with areas that, when there's just two people, you have to experiment with all sorts of areas. So on Midnight Boom, it was all very much about rhythm. I really wanted to expand that. Beforehand, I'd been really bored by drum machines. I'd press play and just let them go in a loop. Midnight Boom, I really tried to work on rhythm. And with this record, it felt more like the first record. It felt more like Alison had been doing Dead Weather, so I had a lot more time making music on my own. And it just felt like I spent so many nights, you know, staying up all night with friends, just playing guitars, drinking wine, and just like loving it, like it wasn't a job, you know. And that's where all these songs came from, and I guess that's the, you know, melody, and they seem a lot more natural to me on Midnight Boom.
¿Y cómo es el proceso de composiciones? ¿Hacen las canciones los dos juntos? ¿Llegan cada uno con sus canciones al estudio? Y también el tema de tocar todos los instrumentos, porque ellos tocan todo en cada disco, la batería, la guitarra.
And how's the process of making the songs? Do you come with your own creations and Alison comes with her creations, and then you meet at the studio, and then you get together and decide? And how is that part of the process? And also, how do you do it to play all the instruments? Because you play all the instruments in the studio.
Well, Alison's very spontaneous, you know. She's like, when she writes songs, it's like firing a gun, you know. You don't really know, it's just quick. But they're not complete, they're not planned out, or they're not sort of, it's just an idea, sometimes just 30 seconds of an idea. But it's really like a gunshot. Whereas mine's much more like a premeditated, planned murder, you know. I take a lot longer and I work out, you know, and I'll wake up and I'll dream of a certain sound, and then I'll try and get that sound and then make it, you know, just sort of make it work. So it's much more of a vision for me, and it takes a lot longer. So in that way, we work really well together. Hers, you know, I take her little gunshots and then I make them, expand them into whole things. And then with mine, it's much more of a vision that I complete myself, but she'll write the odd lyric line or something, or bring something else to it like that.
Respecto al trabajo que realizan en escena, Alison es esta vocalista, esta frontman como salvaje, un poco muy extrovertida, y James es como quien contiene un poco. Me gustaría saber si lo ve de esa manera o cuál es el rol que él siente que tiene en el escenario.
She says that the way she sees you on scene, she sees Alison more like a wild front woman, and you are like her containment, so you contain her a little bit. Is that the way that you see
No.
this? Is that the role that you
No.
feel yourself?
I don't. No, not really. I mean, there's a sense of. I think it's important. Alison isn't sort of. She hasn't really. She plays guitar, just with her heart. She hasn't really learnt properly to play guitar, and I think it's really important not to learn, in a way. That's what I love about her, is that it's all very much from the heart, and I think it would almost spoil it if she learnt too much about songwriting or about music, about playing guitar. It always happens that the more you learn about an instrument, the less ideas you have, So I like harnessing that. In terms of her being wild, I mean, she's very different on stage than off stage, very different. Almost the opposite. So I think a lot of people see her as this kind of crazy wild whirlwind, but actually she's not.
Pero esta dinámica que ellos establecen en escena es una de las cosas más atractivas de Hince, esta tensión que se establece entre los dos.
She said, but this is like the dynamics you have on stage is one of the attractions of watching you on the stage. This sort of tension between you and her.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that comes from. I noticed it really early on when we first started writing songs, and at the start we were going to have a drummer and a bass player and a keyboard player and be a proper band, but we just couldn't find anybody that wanted to play with us. So we were staying up all night, every night for a month, 2 months, playing and writing and developing this thing, and then it seemed after 2 months we'd made all this music and we didn't need anyone else. And I'd worked out ways, I'd started playing the drums and recording little loops and playing to these loops, or programming a drum machine or whatever it was. But it was like a metronome, this back, it never sped up. Not like when you get a normal band with a drummer, you get to the chorus and everyone gets excited and the tempo speeds up. But we never had that. It's this even though we were getting this feeling of excitement and adrenaline, you couldn't speed up because the drum machine was deck. So that's where this tension came from. We were just constantly holding back, and then I'd sort of play with that and find there's always a natural tempo for a song, and then I'd make it a little tiny bit too slow, so really felt like we were holding back, and that to me is where that tension came from, and I loved it. I just thought, wow, this feels brilliant. You can never quite explode. It's just added something quite fearful.
¿Y nunca ha pensado en trabajar con músicos de sesión tanto en estudio como en escena?
Have you ever thought to include session musicians in the studio or on
No,
stage?
not in the studio. I just don't see. This is not a band about being virtuoso musicians. It's the attitude of the people playing the music, not the music itself. We had a gospel choir, obviously, on Blood Pressures, and we've done a couple of shows in the UK recently where I had 4 drummers, which is kind of really strange for us, because it's always been just this drum machine, and then suddenly we had 4 drummers just playing tom-toms along, and it was magical, really good. I'm going to expand that, try and get 8 drummers, work with a few drummers.
Alison formó Dead Weather hace ya algunos años atrás, y me pregunto cómo ha sido para el trabajo de The Kills, que él quería tener esta banda paralela que también es muy importante.
How has it been for the work with the Kills that Alison had made up this other band, Death Weather, for the work that you do together? Has it had any?
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever you do you know, whatever you do in your life affects what comes out in the music. So if you're doing another band, it affects the way you perform. You know, and it definitely changed the way she sang, and it changed the way she performed. You know, she was much more. She was playing with, well, not fighting, but there was 3 guys playing. So she, you know, they're all. She had to find her place of how to perform in that band. So that, I mean, I think that had a really good effect on us. The way her voice changed, I didn't like it so much. You know, it seemed much more kind of normal, straight ahead, one dynamic rock voice, which worked perfectly for that band. But when I got her back in the studio, it wasn't working for the Kills. You know, we have much more. I like the vulnerability in her voice. I like it when her voice cracks, and you know, there's a sort of beauty about it. So we worked quite hard on her voice, trying to get. It made me realise what really was the Kills part of her voice, and versus the Dead Weather part of her voice.
Anoche tocó BDI, la banda de Hince, acá en Santiago. Yo quería preguntarle cómo ve la escena del rock británico mundialmente, cómo está el rock británico parado en este mundo.
¿Cómo se llama la banda?
BDI.
BDI? BDI?
Yeah.
What about them?
No, she's saying that they performed last night, and they
Oh,
performed
Chile.
here in Chile
Oh.
last night. And she said she wants to know how do you see the musical scene in Brooklyn.
How do I see the musical scene? It's a collection of bands, some of them moving in the same direction and others moving in completely different direction. And there's not a scene for me that unifies all those bands. The only thing where I have common thread with bands is when they're my friends. So I'm friends with, you know, like Alex Turner from Arctic Monkeys, or Miles Kane, or, you know, Liam Gallagher. I am friends with them, but I really want to operate in my own scene. I love all those people. They're great, and I feel passionate about what they're doing, but I don't take too much notice of other people's music. I know that's horrible, but I just don't.
El sonido de Kills es mucho más norteamericano que inglés, cuando hasta donde yo entiendo ellos los dos viven en Inglaterra. No sé si está de acuerdo.
Do you agree that your sound is much more American than British, even though both of you live in the UK?
I mean, I think you're always going to hear American. You're going to hear nations in somebody's voice, much more in their guitar playing, you know. So Alison's got an American accent, so she sings with an American accent, so I think it's obviously it comes across as American. Whereas my guitar playing, is it English? I don't know. You know. I think this time around though, I think on Blood Pressures, because of, in fact probably because of Dead Weather, because it was so American, and Alison had been touring with them, and I noticed when she came back she seemed a lot more American, you know, and I was like, so I think I became more English, you know, more of my Englishness came out, you know, like Brian Ferry, Roxy Music, David Bowie. I was really kind of, I had a room in the studio that I put up a little English flag, and you know, I had all my English things, like all that sort of different poetry from, you know, and literature, and had all sort of George Orwell things up, and I think Blood Pressures, it was important for me to sort of find my Englishness a little bit in it, you know.
Y respecto al show de mañana, me gustaría saber qué vamos a esperar al respecto.
And the show tomorrow, what can we expect from it?
It's funny, when in South America, everyone's asked us this question, what to expect from the show, and I don't know. And I like that. I like that I don't know. You know, it's like that's what rock and roll should be about. It's not choreographed. It's not planned. It comes from here and not from here, and sometimes from there. And you know, and it should be like that. It should be this kind of primitive drive that you don't really know, from song to song, from verse to verse, from note to note. I want it to be dangerous, and you know, it could go wrong at any minute. That's what makes me excited about it.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.